Kevin's from Matters of Data or Data, and he provides analytics consulting and helps people with storytelling. And that's the really short elevator pitch. Kevin can do a lot better job of explaining himself, but a great resource for explaining complex information in simplified ways.
Yeah. Thanks for that intro. It's essentially that. I'm going to be talking a little bit today about the digital world of analytics, but my expertise definitely spans beyond digital and just anything data related. Typically, I can help. At the end of this, I'll just display some contact info if you want to reach out and have some follow-up questions. Just another quick question: can everyone see the presentation, the side that you're supposed to see, and not the one with the notes?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about digital analytics. It's really going to be an intro. You know, how to get started, what's the framework on how to think about it, and then a few sort of time-saving ideas on where to look for things. And you know, there are 1,000 reports in Google Analytics. So what are the 3 that I should care about when I'm starting off on this journey? So I'll jump into this, make sure it's working properly. All right. I always like to start off with why. Why should you use Google Analytics? And oops, sorry, gonna go back. And the answer is that, well, recent estimates have claimed, and really these are estimates because you never really can measure this accurately, but more than half of the websites on the internet right now use Google Analytics. So the question is, why is it so popular? And essentially, it's because companies who use Google Analytics can drive more traffic to their website. Then once they're on the website, they can steer them in the direction that they like to steer them to, whether it's learning about your brand or make a purchase, contacting you, whatever it might be. This tool is essentially a foundational tool. Like, it can't do it all on its own, but again, it's that foundational piece that you need. And what it can do is it gives you data, and then you couple that data with the context and the knowledge that you have with your business to make the decisions much easier, more reliable, more consistent. And so these are companies who use Google Analytics. Those who don't, well, let's just say it's not good. Clearly, so there are benefits to using Google Analytics, and then the next thing to consider is, okay, well, what's the cost? And when you think about cost, companies typically think of, well, time and effort. So what are the 2 main aspects of time and effort? Of hard cost, and then time/effort. Really, those are the two big things. And when it comes to money, well, it's free. There's an enterprise version of it. You know, I think it's at $300,000 a year right now. But for the rest of us, that's basically for enterprises. The rest of us, there's a free version, and it has tons of bells and whistles that we can all appreciate and use. And then the time one is quite variable. It really depends on how deep and how crazy you want to go, but you can be set up in a few minutes, and I'm going to cover that today. And you can use it sporadically, you know, once a week, once a month, however you see fit to guide your business. Or you can really, you know, dive deep, and it can really consume your life if you really let it, or you hire a team to take care of that for you. So it's really a wide variety, but again, if you're, you know, small to medium business, it's very manageable, and hopefully, you know, we'll get you started on that today. So now before going into any tool, before you just start clicking and looking at reports, I always like to provide a bit of a thought framework. How should I be thinking about using this tool? What's the best approach so that it's simplified? You have that the setup and the framework in your head before you actually start looking at numbers and results. And the problem essentially reduces to connecting what Google Analytics gives you, right? Which is all of these reports that you see on the left-hand side of the screen. There's some audience reports, behavior reports, what they're doing once they're already on there, reports on, who's actually converting, who's buying something, or who's clicking on things that you want them to click, into the business questions or business objectives. So those are typically, how do I maximize quality traffic to the website? How do I keep them engaged? And how do I remove friction, so to speak? What I mean by removing friction is more, are people getting stuck somewhere along the way once they're on the website? And you want to identify where they're getting stuck, and then perhaps you might want to tweak things on your website to fix those areas where they're getting stuck. At the end of the day, you want to ask yourself real life business questions, and then you want to know where to look to find the metrics, and then know how to react once you see them. So I'm going to jump over now into a really quick demo. I'll just show you how you can set it up on your side. Just bear with me for a quick sec while I transition over. So the first step for getting that going is going to the website. It's called analytics.google.com. The first time you go there, you probably won't see this because you wouldn't have access to accounts. I have access to a few accounts, so I'll see something a little bit different than what you might see. But essentially, you'll see a Get Started button, and it eventually leads you to a Create Account button. And I'll show you, it's a really quick and easy thing to set up. You click on Create Account, and you're just going to answer a few questions. I'm going to call mine Matters of Data. I typically just leave everything checked off, but it is, there is data, and there are some privacy and security questions that you might have, and so you can take the time to read what you'd like to allow Google to have access to, and so on. I typically just leave everything checked off. And the next thing I'll ask you as well, is this for a website? Is this for an app for mobile users, or is it for both? And you can see here that there's a little beta here. They're still testing that. For now, it's probably just simplest to leave it as a web. It seems like the future is heading towards apps and web. They found a way to try to combine the information in the reports into a way that spans both web and applications. So, and they are starting to push people to transition, if they have an existing web or an existing app, to go into that combined mode. But it's very early stages. This is really longer term down the road. You don't really need to concern yourself too much at this point. And then you just answer, okay, well, what's the website name? And I just make it the same thing. There's a data. You typically, hopefully your site is a secure site, an HTTPS site, and not an HTTP site. It's for a lot of reasons, for encryption reasons, for security reasons, for just capability. Google seems to have clamped down a little bit on the tracking that that they have available. The Google Tag Manager works much better, or only if you have an HTTPS. So if you want some more of the sophisticated tracking on your website, you want that secure version. So I'll just put my website. Select the category. The category here is used for benchmarking. They have some relatively, we'll say, rudimentary benchmarking reports that you can use and compare your specific company to. I will say a lot of them, take it with a grain of salt. It's just directional. It's not an exact science. There are so many key factors. that go into why your reports might look to your certain way versus what the benchmarks might be. So again, just use it with a grain of salt, but I'm just going to go with either. For now, as a consulting business, you select your time zone. And so you can see really there's really not much to it. You're answering questions that you definitely already know the answer to. You know, it's not anything too crazy to set up. You're not programming anything. There's no, you know, knowledge of code needed. It's really just answer a few questions, and the basics are going to be done for you. You have a few terms and agreements to accept. I think the permission denied. Of course, this happens because I've already previously set up matters of data on another account, and so it didn't. It caught on to that, and that's good for Google that it's not allowing another particular user to set it up. So what I will say though is that if it were accepted, it'll provide you with a snippet of code, and I'm going to try to find that snippet of code for you. And that code essentially is you copy it and you paste it. You would either need to have access to the website itself, the code that built the website, or somebody that has access to this website. You would give them that snippet of code. You drop it in. Google tells you where to put it. There's a specific spot that it needs to be on the website. You place it in there, and that's it. I could show you what the code looks like. It's not really important what it actually looks like, but it's essentially 10 lines of code. It's very simple. It's this little snippet of code. And again, you just copy and paste that. You don't really need to know what it does. You just need to know that it works. And then you're off to the races. And so what it will typically look like, I'm going to actually just stop right now before jumping into what it might look like and see if any questions, if anybody wants to jump in with any questions so far. I'm not sure.
Kevin, I've got a comment there. I don't know if this is relevant there. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, John. Yep.
Yes. I just wanted to say that the boys did a 10-minute analysis for me a few months back, and it was really helpful. But something that might slow down a few people is, and what hung me up for a couple of months was the simple fact that if you have multiple sites, it can get complicated. I noticed you have multiple sites here and you're using one Google account to do it. I'm not sure how you do that, because what I thought I had to do and what I seem to have gone wrong on was, because I have multiple Google accounts as well. I had tried to set up part of the analytics with one account and then the tag manager with another. And so there was a couple of, just things that were, everybody should know about, but perhaps didn't, just in that setup. So maybe could you comment on that? Like as far as setting up, you don't have to go into how to set up a number of accounts, but maybe you could comment on that, on whether you can have multiple sites with just one Google account.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
And you can, absolutely. So yeah, great question, good point, especially for the setup part of the conversation. Essentially, I'm using Chrome, and with Chrome, because it speaks so nicely to other Google products, with Chrome you have a user set up on the Chrome level. With that one particular user, you are able to have multiple accounts. You can see here, there are a few companies that I have access to, including my own dummy one that I'd set up. So you can have multiple accounts for the user of the Chrome browser. And you can, like you said, you can also have users, other users for Google. So if I click on the drop down here, I have other people that I can, be. And if you're setting up the other Google products that tie to Google Analytics, to your Google Analytics account, best practice would be to use the same Chrome user across the various Google products. So Google Analytics can help you track the basics, some page views, and we'll talk about that. But if you want to track more, get a little more sophisticated with what you're tracking, if somebody clicks on a specific button or downloads a PDF or makes a purchase or any of those types of things, you'll need Google Tag Manager to help with that. And as long as Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics are on the same Chrome user, then they'll be able to talk nicely, and it should be nice and easy that way. There are ways around it. You can share each of these things with other accounts. But in its simplest form, if you're trying to keep things simple, it would be recommended to just use the same Chrome user for the multiple Google products that you have set up, whether it's Search Console, so that it all sort of matches nicely. Again, you can make it work. You can set up specific user permissions for other accounts that you're sharing it with, and that should help with allowing permissions to talk between the various Google services. But again, if we're trying to keep things simple, one user, and it's perfectly happy setting up, speaking to multiple accounts for the one Chrome user. In fact, the neat thing about it is if you do want to if you do want to get access to somebody else's Google Analytics, they can share it with you by adding your email address to their users list. And you don't get an email, there's nothing that happens. It all just sort of happens behind the scenes. And the next time that you go to analytics.google.com, you'll see that particular account is now added to your list. So it's kind of neat how it just sort of works. You don't really have to, accept anything by getting an email or anything like that. All right, so next I'm going to jump into, great question. Unless somebody else had another question or comment.
That was great, thanks.
No problem. So the next question is, we've got things set up. Where do we look? There's this sort of plethora of reports, new language to learn, audience acquisition, behavior conversions. What does that all even mean? Translating these things into English, all of the reports that show up in these categories. I'll leave real time out because that's a separate conversation, but the audience just gives you some knowledge about who's coming to visit your website. Acquisition is where they're coming from. And behavior is, well, once they're on the site, how are they acting and where are they going? What pages are they visiting? And conversions are reports on, again, there's some little bit of setup that has to be done to do these, but essentially they generally cover how many people are doing the thing that you want them to do on your websites, whether it's buying something or downloading a PDF or linking to another referral site or whatever it is. They would fall into the conversions area. And so typically where I start is this one report that falls under acquisition, under all traffic and channels. So this particular path, this one report is, to me, the best starting point for knowing where to dig next. And it gives you a high level overview of what's going on your website, where people are coming from and how they're behaving and so on in this one report. And then you can dig further as needed. So again, it's acquisition, all traffic, channels. And these numbers, just so you know, I'm not sharing anyone in particular's specific metrics. Google Merchandise Store is free and open to use for everybody. And so their website, you can always, I use this just for demos whenever I'm doing training or anything like that. So we're not looking at any sensitive information here, none of my clients, it really is just Google's public account. There's a date range that you can always play with date ranges for reports, but the main story here is that you have one table that tells you a list of where people are coming from. So the breakdown of organic or directly typing the URL into their browser. If they're coming from a referral, maybe some of the ad stuff that you're doing on social or display. So where are they coming from? And then going across the top is visually even that customer journey. Okay, well, this is how many people, the traffic that they're coming from, how many sessions they created. And then once they're on the site, well, how many of them just land there and leave? That's what bounce rate means. They just kind of get there. Maybe they got the information they wanted and they left, but they don't interact with the website beyond just arriving. And then how many pages on average do they visit? How long do they spend? And then how many people go on to actually purchase something? And what percentage of the people that come from organic search go on to here. So you can use this report. Perhaps here you see that organic search is a big driver of conversions. And you might want to decide, well, you know what, I'm going to put some more money behind SEO and more effort behind SEO because I know that if they're coming from that channel, they have a higher chance of actually converting and buying something from our website. So just this one report, you can already sort of help drive your strategy on how you want to drive your digital plan. And then that's one report. We can always dive deeper into all of these things. But the other one that I always like to is okay, well, once they're on the website, what are the most popular pages? You can use these types of reports to, which would fall under behavior, site content, and all pages. And that would essentially cover what are the most popular pages, what are the least popular pages. It'll help you figure, maybe if you see that pages are underperforming then versus your expectations or even overperforming, then you can react accordingly and change your content. And then ultimately for conversions, it would be just goals and overview. The top ones would give you an overview of all of your particular goals. Again, there's some setup, but these would be the reports that you would want to look at when you're just starting out. Again, there are easily 50 reports in there. There's so much there, but those three should really get you at least asking the right questions and framing up how you think about what you want to do with your digital strategy. We've only got a couple minutes here. I do want to say I wanted to summarize, because I only have a couple minutes, the approach. Again, now that you've sort of seen a few aspects about it, again, I wanted to summarize the fact that you're trying to translate what you're seeing in Google Analytics into solving business problems. When you're planning things out into how to gather data and how to use Google Analytics, do it in the opposite order of how you're actually going to gather the data. So think about your objective first, and then work your way backwards to gathering data using Google Analytics. Make sure you keep context in mind. There's some great examples about, sure, there's a number, you see 55. Is 55 good or bad? And so context is really important. Segment, as in, Google Analytics is great where you can click and you can drill down and you really start answering the specific questions about what's driving the numbers that you're seeing. So this is where segmenting comes into play, and benchmarking where possible. In the digital world, it's an interesting field, and Bob, you had a great question about A/B testing and benchmarking, and it can be complicated, it can be nuanced, but you'll generally just want to get to a close enough for rock and roll type mentality, and how do I move forward from here, rather than looking at the specific exact science. Apologies for that. That's it for now. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to put up, in case you did want to.
Can I ask a question, Kevin?
Absolutely, Nadia. Yeah.
Hi. Okay, so for conversions, can you set up a conversion for example, link clicks or form signups, as well as e-commerce stuff?
Yeah, great question. So I failed to mention that when you first set up Google Analytics, what's included with that initial setup is page views. So you get those, and that's basically it. The good thing is with just having page views is you get a whole plethora of all the other things, like where people are coming from and what type of people, where are they going, those types of things. Specific events like clicking on something or clicking on an outlink or a PDF download or making a purchase, that involves some extra implementation and typically involves Google Tag Manager. So it's not part of Google Analytics' base package. But to answer your specific question about goals, the best practice for goals are you can set up the event you can set up the tracking so that it does track that. But what you typically want to do is have that fall under events. So events are something that's completely different than goals. It'll just show up again in that behavior area of Google Analytics. And you have an unlimited number of events that you can track. Goals are supposed to be more for things that have a direct business impact. So if somebody makes that purchase, or if there's some monetization that happens when maybe a newsletter download, you can say that, well, if 20% of my newsletters, if they typically end up converting, then you can assign a business value, or you can say that this is important to my business. So as long as you feel like it has a direct business impact, then you can set it up to fall under your conversions, your goals, that type of area.
So your conversion rates, they can be based on your events, right? Not just goals. Like they can be based on your raw event data, right?
No, conversion rates do have to be through goals. And because the only thing with goal is you have a maximum of 20 goals that you're allowed to set up. So you only have those 20 slots. That's plenty for most small, medium businesses. And if you really feel like you want to track that and track it as a goal and you want to see it as a conversion, by all means. It really is, it's up to you. What I mentioned before is really just sort of best practice and perhaps for larger organizations. But if you think you want to see it as a conversion rate in your reports, then yes, by all means, set it up as an event, and then it's easy to set up a goal to trigger once that event happens.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Any other questions? I just put my contact info up for now if you have some follow-up questions. I don't want to take up too much of your time and SEO Brunch's time, but